The case that South Africa has brought against Israel at the International Court of Justice is extraordinarily important to try and stop the daily slaughter of innocent civilians in Gaza. I have never seen a legal filing as thorough, as convincing, and as overwhelming as this one. And I say this as a Jew, as the son of a Holocaust survivor. Never again didn't mean only for Jews. Never again meant we must never see the slaughter that we saw during the Holocaust again. And it doesn't matter who these crimes are being committed against, just as it doesn't matter who the perpetrators of these crimes are. I've been covering conflict my entire life. I have never seen anything on the scale of the brutality, the barbarity, and the inhumanity of what we have been seeing in Gaza since the 7th of October. Israel decided quite intentionally to target and attack Palestinian journalists and their families. That was an attempt to stop the world seeing what Israel is actually doing in Gaza, because they know that it is indefensible. And however many Palestinian journalists they target and kill, the footage and the photos continue to be seen around the world, because there are enough Palestinians on the ground who have the courage to document what is happening. So Israel itself and Israel's supporters around the world have suggested that South Africa taking Israel to the court is somehow anti-Semitic. An Israeli government spokesperson even described it as a blood libel.
And we are going to fight this absurd blood libel.
How are those people able to watch those images of children who have been killed, who have been injured or maimed, having to be treated without anesthetic, and say Israel should be allowed to continue its murderous actions in Gaza? And the fact that it is South Africa taking Israel to this court, a country that knows what apartheid is, that knows what it is to live in perpetual conflict, makes it particularly symbolic and important. I was involved in the struggle against apartheid from my late teens in South Africa, and then landed up as a member of parliament for Mandela's ANC when we came to power in 1994. And while the struggle against apartheid in South Africa was an extraordinarily difficult one, in which thousands of people were murdered in cold blood by the apartheid state, hundreds of women massacred because they dared to protest, school children slaughtered by gunfire because they refused to learn in the language of their oppressor, political activists assassinated, detained, executed by the apartheid state. It was nothing on the scale of Israel's oppression of the Palestinian people. And that is primarily because there is one fundamental difference. In South Africa, the apartheid state was heavily dependent on the Black African workforce for the economy to function. Israel does not have that dependency on the Palestinian population in the occupied territories, as a consequence of which, in order to effectively usurp the territory that is today Gaza, Israel is prepared to massacre tens of thousands of ordinary Palestinians in what can only be described as ethnic cleansing and a genocide. South African apartheid was never as brutal, never as murderous as this. We're also seeing an extraordinary situation where Western politicians are probably more distant from their citizens on the issue of a ceasefire in Gaza than they have been at any time since many of them engaged in the ill-fated invasion of Iraq. Joe Biden in the United States of America is losing significant swathes of his support base. Because if anybody can stop Israel continuing its massacre in Gaza, it is President Joe Biden, whose country supplies Israel with around 70% of its weapons. The difficulty that the court has is how it would enforce any decision against Israel. But the moral impact of a decision against Israel would make it that much more difficult for our politicians to continue to justify their support of Israel. Whatever happens at the ICJ, the reality is that Israel has lost the propaganda war. Look at the outpouring of sympathy for Palestinians from around the world. And those marches and demonstrations are just getting bigger and bigger the longer that Israel's indefensible actions continue. We are seeing even a brand as global and as almost omniscient as McDonald's suffer significant losses because of boycotts against it, because of the fact that McDonald's provided food to the Israeli Defense Force. We have seen direct action activists in the United Kingdom, a group called Palestine Action, 8 of their activists found not guilty by a very high court, despite their ongoing actions to occupy, disrupt, and damage Israeli arms factories in the United Kingdom. And what is it that these millions of people around the world want? They want Palestinian people to be treated with the same levels of justice, of equality, together with all the people from the river to the sea. And if South Africa's history has shown us anything, it has shown us that despite real fears of the minority population when South Africa became a democracy, that groups who are racially, ethnically, religiously different can live together in harmony when we treat each other with mutual respect, with humanity, and with a sense of justice. There has never been a more important time for alternative media. Our traditional media paints one picture of what is happening in Israel-Palestine. We rely on outlets like Double Down News to tell us the truth. Support independent media, support Double Down News on Patreon.